Hello and welcome to another Pluma podcast. Today we have with us a very interesting guest, one of my friends, Arash Farzaneh. Did I pronounce that right?
That is perfect. Yes.
Okay, who is a very interesting person because, like many people who have come to the Pluma podcast, is actually a person who's been in contact with very many different cultures. I was going to say that you're an immigrant, but I think we'll have to talk about that a little bit more because I'm not even sure. You've lived in so many places, and you're going to tell us about that. That I'm not even sure if you consider. Let's start with that. Do you consider yourself to be an immigrant here in Canada, or do you kind of see yourself as a Canadian who has kind of been to other countries?
I think like Canada is the place many things I identify myself with, but at the same time, there are certain clashes I find with where I grew up, which is in Germany. So it's kind of a mix, a hybrid of those things. So I think in many ways I'm Canadian, but in many other ways I'm also German. And the strange thing is that I lived there, but I never got the citizenship of Germany. So basically it doesn't really count, and for me it does, because that's the place I would call home.
Really? Okay,
Yes.
so legally, you're not German, but in
No.
your heart, in some place, it has a special place.
Heart and mind and punctuality and a lot of ways of seeing the world is very similar. So when I get together with German friends, I feel like I'm completely welcome. I'm at home.
You feel
I
at
can
home.
be myself.
Okay,
Yeah.
you feel at home with your German friends.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us, just for the audience who's watching us, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be in contact with so many languages and lived in so many places. What's kind of like your life story?
Yeah, in many ways it started. I was born in Iran. I was very small, and we went to the States, and that's where my dad was studying in California, the university, and for 4 years. So technically, English is my first language because that's the first language I learned. And then we went back to Iran, and which was after the revolution, and it was wartime, and we ended up getting out of the place, escaping, and finding political asylum eventually in Germany. And then suddenly I had to speak German, and which I didn't speak a word of.
Do you remember, I don't know how old you were, but do you remember your time in Iran when you went back there?
Yes, very few things, but I do. And I remember not being able to communicate with anyone,
With
which
anyone?
was very isolating at the
But
time.
you would have spoken Farsi, I take it, with your parents?
That's the thing. I spoke only English with my dad,
Okay.
and that's all I knew.
Is that because back then a lot of people had the kind of mentality that it is good, you want your kids to speak English? When you lived in the States, they wanted to adapt. Because I think that it's changing now, right? A lot of people are telling us we should speak to our kids in our native language rather than the language of the country where we go to, because they're going to learn that language anyway, right? But did your dad think it was a good idea? It was most important for you to speak English at that time?
I think he was the one who talked more to me than my mother at the time,
Okay.
and so it was very interesting for me because it was very different culture because I again lived in the U.S. and suddenly it's a language I don't understand, a culture I don't understand, and I remember soldiers coming to our place to look for things, and I was on the phone with my dad. But I told him everything in English, and none of them understood what I was saying. So I was communicating. It's like, Dad, this is weird. You should come back home. This is not good. And so he did. And it was just very strange. I learned Farsi, but years later in Germany, but at home.
Okay.
So that was the thing. But with my own son, we did both languages. I spoke to him English from the beginning, before he was even born in the womb. I speak to him in English, and his mother, she's Mexican and would speak Spanish, and there was no confusion. He would know how to separate the two languages.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you grew up first speaking English, but not really Farsi.
Not really
Then you guys moved back to Iran. How long were you in Iran? And do you remember that as a happy time?
It was a weird time.
Weird time.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
But they did also have aerial attacks, like bombers flying, and like we had to hide under the table and that kind of turning off all the lights and so on. Those kind of things I do remember a little bit, but very short time really.
Were you scared?
I was I thought it was fun for me, right? But no, I wasn't really scared. I didn't
You didn't really
understand.
take it
Yeah,
in like as it really was, right?
yeah,
Like it was
yeah.
I assume, a really dangerous situation, but maybe for a child you couldn't quite
Yeah,
comprehend.
because also I couldn't communicate with people. I think that was it. And actually, at one point, I was shouting something against the regime outdoors with some neighbors, and I had no idea what I was saying. But I went along, and then neighbors said, like, you got to watch out for his son. He's he's a revolutionary, even back then. But I had no clue what's going on.
But you don't know what you were
No,
shouting.
no,
How did you
no.
know it was revolutionary? You were just
Well,
saying what the other people were
I
saying?
found out later when they said like, yeah, you were like saying things that you're not supposed to say.
I can just imagine. How old were you at this point?
Five,
Roughly
five,
like five, and I
six,
can
yeah.
just imagine like some neighbors yelling some stuff
Yeah,
against the
yeah,
regime and the
yeah,
little kid
yeah.
who only
Joining
speaks
them.
English joining them. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
That's a really cool story.
yeah.
And then after that, you grew up in Germany because
Mhm,
you went there to Germany, and you're
mhm.
saying that Germany has, or German culture has, an important place in your heart.
I loved it in many aspects. So it became my first language. Then
Mm-hmm.
I lost my English, and which was interesting. And just in terms of art, like I loved
Mm-hmm.
classical music. I loved German composers, German songs, Schubert, and like just poetry. I would read Goethe and all stuff. So I just thought it absolutely amazing. Like there's so much depth there, and completely identified as a teenager with a lot of those things that
Mm-hmm.
I was reading and listening to at the time.
Mm-hmm. Right. And then after Germany, you also, obviously, you're in Canada now, and you also have a connection to the Spanish speaking
That's right.
world
Yeah.
through your wife and your
Yeah.
child
Yes.
who speaks Spanish.
Yes.
So tell us about that part.
Well, it was the idea was I finished a French degree and I wanted to teach French, but the problem was people would say, "Well, that's great, but you don't have experience," and I would say, "Well, you have to give me experience first, and then
Then
I
I'll
can
have it.
be hired. Then I'll have
Okay.
it, right?" So I ended up going to Mexico. I thought for a year
Mm-hmm.
to teach English at a school in a town that's called Costa Rica, and I actually found out that it's not worthwhile. It's a place that's like more a petrol town and not the best place to be. But I was actually told not to go, so I decided I'll go anyway to find out for myself.
And this is where you met your wife.
This is, yeah, I met her there, yeah. But it
Okay.
was kind of interesting because on the plane I met this Mexican guy, a very nice guy who was working in Alberta, and I didn't speak a word of Spanish when I went there, but he was excited. He said, "Oh my God, your life is going to change. You're going to Mexico, you're going to get married and have kids." And I just laughed and I said, "No, I'm just going for a year."
Did you
And
think that was a possibility when he said
no,
that in that
no,
moment?
no.
Not even
I
on
was
the
like,
horizon at
no.
all. Okay.
And so later on, I sent him an email and I said, "You are right.
It's almost
This
like
did happen."
he read your fortune.
He did. He
Right.
did. Yes.
Okay.
And yeah, so I ended up staying 5 years, and my son was born in Mexico.
Mexico.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. And then why French?
Um, French is an interesting story too. In Germany, I we had the choice between taking either Latin or French classes,
Mm-hmm.
and I went to my first French class, and they made crepes, so the French pancakes, and I was like, I'm sold. I'm gonna do this for life, right? And that really got me, and had very good experiences with teachers. Had very good teachers. Um, quite a few of them quite demanding, and which I appreciated, and just loved it. Just loved the language, the movies, the culture, the literature, and continued.
Okay. Okay, it sounds great about the crepes. I take it the Latin teacher did not have a Latin themed
No, and
thing going on.
he didn't seem very nice, welcoming. He was very like old school, and he was an older person who
Of
would
course,
throw
he was the Latin.
who would throw chalk at people, and that turned me off. I'm not a big fan of that.
So it was like crepes on the one hand, and on the other throwing chalk at people.
Yeah.
Good choice. You then had this connection to Farsi, to French, to English, to German, of course, and to Spanish. Those 5 languages. Have I missed any?
No, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah,
Those
that's
5.
it. Yeah.
Okay. And now that I'm talking to you and you speak so many languages, I want to ask you something that a lot of people have asked me about and I've heard in conversations at parties and everything else. Do you feel like some things are best expressed in one language over another?
Absolutely. There's certain expressions that I think like the language nails it, and there is no equivalent, and I find it very frustrating when it's like I can't express the same thing in that other language.
Zum Beispiel?
Schadenfreude is something that we talk about, that's known. But for me, like the strange thing in French was they don't have road trip. And they just say voyage en voiture, which is basically...
It doesn't sound the same.
It's not the same. And I actually personally complained to a French guy and said, what's wrong with you guys? Why don't you have road trips? And he said, because we don't have the space to have road trips. You guys have a lot of space and you can do it. Our place is pretty cramped in Europe.
Yeah.
So.
It's a shame you can't make a complaint like to the French language authorities.
Well, I'm starting small. Maybe you'll get there. Maybe.
You're trying to get some momentum going. Like, okay, no, but it's interesting. I think the same in Spanish, right? I can't think of a good way to say road trip in the American sense, in the sense that we mean it here, where you want to go on a road trip. It's not just that you're gonna go in the car for a while.
My favorite Spanish word is actually ni modo. Ni modo. Like, we can't do anything about it, right? And I like that because it's like, I tried, well, it didn't work out. And there's no equivalent of that in other languages. But one thing I found out in Mexico, which is, again, a bit of a culture shock, was that the word now, ahora, does not mean now. And there are actually different words for it. So
it means in a bit.
Ahora means in the next few days, like, in my experience.
Time
right?
inflation, right?
Then we have ahorita, which in Mexico was, okay, it's pretty close, maybe it's, soon. And then ahorita mismo, which is right now, right? So that helped me to distinguish if I wanted something.
The closest to now is ahorita mismo, right? According to this categorization that...
For my German mind, that was very confusing. Because when you say like now, I expect it to be very, very soon.
Not to stereotype, but that is quite a change between the Latino culture that we have versus the German culture. Yes. I remember one time I was in Germany, and I'm actually very punctual myself. But I remember one time I was in Germany and I was studying Italian there with a bunch of German people, and then there was a break. And after the break, we came back to the class, and I was late because I don't know, I didn't remember what time the break ended or something like that. And then someone told me that the German people had been saying, who's late, who's not here? Obviously, it's the Spanish woman.
Oh my God. Well,
yeah. So, this punctuality issue is quite interesting, right? The Germans stereotypically thought to be so exact.
But I had the opposite experience in
Did
Mexico because I got at my university I was teaching. I got a prize, like we got money, like recognition, and there was an event to recognize all the excellent, outstanding teachers.
Yeah.
And the event like was at a specific time, and I went there. It was 6 p.m. I was there. And surprisingly, like all the other English teachers were there too, even though there were Mexicans, a lot of them. We were there. The rest of the departments, they came late. right? And it was like, so it's like, it's not just the culture itself, it's like the mentality that goes with the language in a way that, you know, we were actually on time, the others just trickled in later on. So I found that very, very interesting too.
It's almost like a different attitude towards life and what's important, right?
Yes.
And I mean this in a neutral way, because I think in some situations it might be better to be more one way versus the other.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing, I mean, the opposite is if you're punctual in many places, whether it's Iran, again, where where I was born, or in Mexico, where I live too. It's if you're punctual, you go on time. That's actually kind of rude. So you want to be careful not to do that, and so that's a bit challenging because
It's rude because people aren't ready for you for
no,
the dinner party.
especially in Persian culture, if they invite you for dinner and you go there right on time, it means like basically I'm hungry, give me food, and
You're too keen.
You're too keen, exactly, and that's something that was a learning experience for me. It's like I have to tone down the keenness sometimes in certain situations.
That's kind of interesting. I've had experiences like that between like difference between Spanish culture, where I think there is a word for it. I wish I could remember it. But like cultures where, you know, you're supposed to say things as they are. Like, do you want more? Yes, I would like more. Thank you. Versus in places like, I think in Spain, I was told like to say, no, I'm not hungry, to say
even
no,
though you
thank
are,
you. Yeah, even though you
same
are.
in Persian culture. Yeah, they have that too. It's kind of rude.
Too
To
keen,
say,
right?
yes,
You're like, yes,
yes,
I'm hungry.
yes.
Yeah.
So, which was strange because we had dinner with an Australian woman and my wife and I, and we were still hungry, and the food had ended, and there was no more left, and we thought, oh, this is strange. Like this could not work in our cultures, respective cultures. So we, after dinner, we just went out and had tacos. But having your guests leave with hunger is unheard of in both Mexican and Persian cultures.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
very interesting how navigating different cultures, and
Yeah.
it gives you like a different perspective on life, right? I kind of imagine if you've grown up, if you've been born into a certain culture and you've grown up with it, childhood, adult life, married life, everything, you might more easily have a sense that that is what the world is like, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But that's the thing, that's the beauty of like having different experiences, like living in different parts and speaking different languages. The downside is then you never feel at home, and there's like a restlessness where I don't feel completely at home in any place, and every place has something that I like, but it's never 100%. So I kind of like, I feel like people who just have one culture or one language, I kind of envy them sometimes. There's this Swiss woman. She said, "Yeah, well, you speak 5 languages, but you don't speak any of them really well." And I found that odd, but I said, "Yeah, I kind of agree with that. Yeah,
Do you
I speak
agree with
them
that?
quite good, quite well, right? But if you just have one language, then that's the one you focus on and you know extremely well. But I still prefer."
I think I'm gonna disagree with that one. I think you can have more of a sense of the nuance of a language if you speak other languages. Like you see it a little bit more from the
I still prefer my
outside.
complex, confused mind
So do
over
I.
over that. Yeah.
So do I, because and I think a lot of immigrants, even if you've just moved from one country to another one time, feel this way. You never quite belong to the place where you came from.
Yes.
And sometimes you see people who are very nostalgic about the place they came from, maybe because they've come to the country, say, as refugees, and they can't go back, or for whatever other reason they can't go back. And they have this kind of nostalgia that this is where their heart is. But I've also seen situations where they go back and they realize that that they have changed as well, right? So it's like that.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's a great point because it's quite fluid. It's not static, and like our thoughts sometimes are, our feelings may be, they may be stuck in the past and the good old times, but
Yeah.
again, we forget a lot of things that were not good, right? They're like the okay times sometimes.
Yeah.
But that's true. It's quite fixed, and I think I would, if I had the choice of going through my life, I think I'd pretty much do the same things and all the different languages and cultures because it's rich. Yeah, it gives. I have different perspectives. I can put on my French hat, my beret, or you know.
What's a German hat?
My,
Or is it a different accessory?
Lederhosen,
Okay.
my beret, and
Leather pants.
leather pants. Right?
Yeah, I'm doing.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's great. And what do you think all of that richness of having been in different cultures, immersed in different languages, what kind of life lessons have you got from all of that?
That it does take effort, right? Learning a language, adjusting to a culture. It's also humility. Like you know, when people say my culture is superior to others, they're like, no, it's not. You know, and I mean, all of them. It's just so fascinating. I think it's just being there, seeing that. And I think knowing all these different languages is also a superpower because I can eavesdrop on the bus on different people speaking different languages.
We love superpowers here.
Yeah, and I like to surprise them. And it's always like when they meet someone here, German people meet me, and they're like surprised that I speak the language and know about the culture. It's like it feels good for me and for them. And I think. People who just speak one or just like two languages don't miss out on that. They don't have that wide range of experiences, opportunities.
They really do, and it's something that connects with your brain in a different way. I have a friend who gets very annoyed that a lot of people who maybe speak English very well, but not as their first language, they will say, "Oh, English is just not a rich language like my language, which is Polish or Spanish or whatever." And he says that's not the case. English is a very rich language if you speak it as a native speaker, if you haven't just gone to university to study a science degree, but you have like read Shakespeare and you have read like a bunch of stuff, then you can feel English and the nuances and stuff like that. And that's one thing. But also I have heard a lot of English speakers who say or who believe that English music or art is the best in the world by far because they kind of reason that it is the most popular worldwide. And I think it's so funny because I know German music, Spanish music, French music. I think if you do know another culture, another language, you're going to find amazing works of art that you are just not, it's just the way the world is politically, that they're not well known by other cultures and other languages. What do you think of that, about like art in different countries in different languages?
I think I approach it in a different way because I don't have actually a first language or a first culture. So each one of them I enter as like a student, as somebody who's like exploring.
Okay.
And so each of them I find fascinating. And in my mind, I don't really compare them because they stand on their own, right? And it's like, you know, when I only have one kid, but if you have several, I mean, you love them equally and you love them for their different things and their different flaws, right? And that's how I see languages. All the languages that I know, it's because yes, French music is beautiful. So is English speaking music. So is Spanish.
So right? Is German music.
So German
not
music,
so well known.
Yes, not so well known, exactly. There's some really good stuff there. And I think that kind of awe, I think, would be like entering it with that awe and that open mind. And I don't like comparing things because that usually leads us in a different place, and it's not usually a good place when we do that. The only thing I would say is in terms of difficulty, when people want to say, it's like, yeah, well, German is quite difficult in terms of grammar, but it's in terms of phonetically pronouncing it, you know exactly what you get, right? So there's ups and downs, good things and bad things.
And there can also be something charming and even magical about learning a language that's difficult.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. I did try to teach myself Russian when I was much younger because I loved Russian literature, but at some point I was like, I think this is too difficult. And sadly I gave up back then.
Oh, that's a shame. You could have added a sixth language. Do you ever think about learning a new language now?
I think I'm trying to just keep them up
Keep them up.
and not lose them. And it's like juggling many balls at the same time. And occasionally I do have dreams in all the languages that I speak, and they're very confusing when I wake up. I'm like, oh my God.
Because if you think about it, I mean, especially if you speak those languages very well, your brain physically is probably quite different from the brain of a person who only speaks one language, right? Like
Yeah.
real things that you could physically see in a scan if you had like the right machinery to see it.
And I see it as a competition. I'm like, okay, which language is going to be first? Because it's not always set. When I say, what's your native tongue? It's like, well, currently it's English. It wasn't always that. And maybe in the future it'll be, I don't know, Spanish or French, right? Depending on which one is the one that I use the most. And
It,
yeah.
it, it is quite interesting because I believe that research shows that your brain, generally speaking, does have a first language that, let's say, as you get very old, as your brain deteriorates, it will be the last one to go. That's what I understood
Well, what I've
from the
heard is,
research.
yeah, is the one that you swear in, but I'm swearing in French as well, so I'm not sure, right? If that is correct, but yeah, so it's interesting.
It is interesting because for someone like you really wouldn't know. And for someone like me, I grew up speaking Spanish, but there were times in my life when English was much more dominant. So it's kind of like, is it still your first language? But then again, I think about like physically, is your brain built like from the inside out? And are the things you learned first the strongest? And then I'm reminded of some research also that shows that people, even people who come to speak a language very well, sometimes when they have things like dementia or something like that, they become worse and worse at that language.
The first language?
No,
Oh, the other.
the ones that were learned after,
Okay,
right?
interesting.
So as if
Yeah,
as if it were like a core language, and
yeah.
then, yeah, which is quite interesting. And I have actually seen that happening to some people as they age. So do you have a sense of which would be the last language to go, or you really don't?
I don't, and that's kind of sad thing to think about.
Not that it's going to happen.
But I think like something that I'm seeing now, I'm maybe I'll mix them up, and maybe it'll be like a mix of different languages.
That will
And
be confusing for people who
yeah,
look after you if that ever
yeah,
happens, which I hope it doesn't.
yeah. No, I specifically asked someone who speaks all the languages that I speak, so they'd be able to understand me.
Well, if not, they will use Google Translate,
There you go.
which hopefully by then, many, many years from now will be amazing.
Yeah.
It's already pretty good, but it will just be like really amazing by then.
Yeah.
I often think about what will the world be like, in 50 years time or something, when everything is accelerating so much already in every direction. What do you think about the future? And what do you think about the future of languages? Do you think English is going to be the only language left, like some people predict?
I don't think so. I think I think languages and cultures are kind of stubborn in that way. They're like, they do survive things. I mean, again, mostly, like mainly the ones where many people speak it and preserve it. I think that's important to continue with that. And I think like in terms of also like AI taking over my job as a language instructor, I don't see that happening because it's not just teaching the words or the grammar. It's also the human aspect of it that is so important for learning, and the patience and the empathy and all the things that go with it. So I'm not too worried about it, and I think it can actually be a great tool where all the boring stuff AI can take over, and we just focus on having fun.
I completely agree with you. And obviously, it's a huge conversation in my industry, which is translation, which was famously, there was this report or something where they said translators were going to be the first ones to go because of AI. But I agree with you about language instructors, for sure. Also, the case with interpreters, right? That it's not just like the transmission of the information in the coldest sense that is important, and maybe machines can do a lot of that, and maybe they will get much better, but it's like your presence, your mentorship. Yeah.
And the level of creativity, even like when it comes to translating, because you wanna you want to not just translate word for word, but get kind of the feeling of it, or like the message, or the puns sometimes. And especially if you're looking at maybe fiction or poetry, it's like sometimes it's something very different, but it still gets very close to what the initial idea was or the feeling was of the writer. And or maybe they disagree and you take in a different direction, which is also fun.
It's a new work of art,
Yes,
right? When it
that's
comes to literary translation,
Yeah.
I think a friend of mine told me about this, and it's very true. So how can you say that a machine can translate a literary book when you have different translations and they're completely different? And I think that's what it is, right? Like the translation has some essence of the original, but it's also its own thing, its own
Yes.
work of art.
Yes, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And AI could not do that because you also need a level of experience, personal experiences to, and a felt way of the language, the felt knowledge of the language that it will never have. I'm pretty sure as a machine, it will never be able to do that.
Right. Okay, I think this has gone by super quickly, but thank you. It's been such an interesting conversation, and I'm sure we could have many more because you have lots of different aspects of your life that we haven't really talked about.
For sure.
Like as a writer, you have your own podcast. You want to just tell us, in case we do another episode with you, like briefly a little bit about that and what you do with your time.
So philosophy has been very important for me when I was younger. Just asking myself questions like simply like just why, what for, why, and those kind of things. And I think like that's why I started also my blog where I decided to explore my path in life and different things that were of interest to me, and that kind of shifted to psychology too. And because I remember like before, philosophy and psychology were the same thing, right? They were not separate. And I really like that point. And like when you even look at the ancient Greek philosophers and even afterwards, there's like, I think it's both. And trying to like artificially separate them is just, you lose something in that aspect. So I have a very holistic view of things. And that's been my blog, but especially during the pandemic, I used to do book reviews before, but I ended up talking to the authors of the books and going more and talking to psychologists, psychiatrists, and actors and writers and so on. And it's just been so fascinating to explore all those realms with others together and to figure out what they're about, and showcase them.
Yeah, I can see that being a lot richer. I mean, not that it's very valuable as well to write your own review or to give your own opinion about something, but actually having a conversation where you can share your opinion and they can give you something.
And I also test my own views with them. It's like, well, this is what I think.
This is what I'm thinking.
And it's quite fascinating how many like actually agree with it and how many I agree with. And so some of them I disagree with, but I'm still like welcome to that the place where we can discuss, debate things, and maybe get to different conclusions.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you so much for coming.
Thank
and
you for
before you
having
go, we always do this the egg questions. Okay. So, do you want to try one, see what you get?
All right. It's a long one.
Oh, a long question. I like it already.
Okay. What advice would you give to someone who wants to live in another country and teach a foreign language? Okay.
Okay, that's a very practical question.
Yeah. So it's tailored for me. Who wants to live in another country?
Should they do it? Is it worth it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Yeah. Just make sure that it's relatively safe. I think that's you want to investigate, research it a little bit. But I would very much recommend it to connect with the people, to connect with the cuisine, the local culture, and interact with them. And for teaching a foreign language, I think it's just great fun, and not to be intimidated, even if you don't speak it perfectly yourself, maybe, or there's some things you don't know. I think just dive into it and go for it. Right? It's rewarding, and you will grow like anyone. Even as a teacher, you learn things and you get better at it.
Get better at being a teacher too,
And being
right?
a teacher and being a human being and living in wherever you live, right? A resident of that place.
Absolutely. Okay, one more, and then we're
Okay,
done.
sure. Okay. What are you most passionate about as a language teacher? My students. My students. I love it when it makes a difference in their lives, and I like to share this example with a student who said, "You know what? I really don't like French, but I liked your class." And others who I sometimes think, I don't know if it's a good thing, but sometimes they switch the major and go into languages instead of what they were initially meant to do. So
Because of you,
because of
you could have ruined their lives.
Yes, that's exactly it. I take full responsibility if they're watching and listening. But I hope that's something that resonates with them, and I appreciate that, to be able to divert people in a different direction.
Okay. Thank you so much, Arash, for sharing your thoughts and your ideas and your life experiences with us. It's been really nice having you on our Pluma podcast.
Thank you so much.
You.